There is a truth most people never want to say out loud. The partners we choose are rarely an accident. We are drawn to the familiar, even when the familiar has wounded us. We call it chemistry, destiny, a spark. But often, it is unresolved pain trying to finish a story it never got to complete. Every attraction carries a history. Every relationship mirrors a childhood memory. And every heartbreak reveals something we were never taught to look at. Trauma has a way of choosing for us when we don't choose for ourselves. We do not fall for people because they are right for us. We fall for people who reflect what we believe about ourselves, even when that belief is shaped by abandonment, silence, emotional neglect, or chaos. Your partner choice is not random. It is a message. It is a mirror. It is a map of where you've been and where you still need to heal. If you want to understand a person's history, look at who they love. If you want to understand your own pain, look at who you keep returning to. Because the truth is simple. We pick partners that fit the emotional blueprint carved into us long before we ever learned the word relationship. If love once meant walking on eggshells, you may confuse anxiety with excitement. If love once meant earning attention, you may mistake emotional labor for connection. If love once meant being invisible, you may settle for people who never truly see you. And none of this is weakness. It is the nervous system searching for what it recognizes. But familiarity is not the same as destiny. And the people you choose will either replicate the wounds you carry or reveal the healing you still need to do. There is a hidden cost to ignoring trauma. Ignore it, and you will normalize relationships where your needs are minimized. Ignore it, and you will carry guilt for asking for what is basic. Ignore it, and you will stay loyal to people who are not loyal to your well-being. Trauma doesn't ruin your ability to love. It simply narrows your definition of what love is allowed to feel like. But here's what most never understand. Your partner is not the source of your pain. They are the surface where your old wounds finally become visible. When someone withdraws, an old abandonment resurfaces. When someone raises their voice, an old fear awakens. When someone dismisses your feelings, an old shame gets triggered. This is not overreaction. This is memory. We are not reacting to the moment. We are reacting to the echo of moments we were too young to process. And healing does not begin by blaming yourself for your patterns. Healing begins by understanding them. Healing begins when you stop asking, "Why do I choose people who hurt me?" and start asking, "What story is my nervous system still trying to resolve?" Because when you finally give language to the silence you grew up with, when you finally give voice to the child who learned to endure instead of express, when you finally recognize the pattern as a wound, not a personality, you stop choosing partners who mirror your pain and start choosing partners who support your growth. The moment you become aware, everything changes. Awareness disrupts the cycle. Awareness opens the door to choice. Awareness allows you to outgrow relationships you once thought you could not live without. And slowly, something extraordinary happens. You stop chasing people who feel like home and start building a home within yourself. The people you attract begin to shift. The dynamics you tolerate begin to shift. The definition of love begins to shift. Love becomes a space where you can breathe, not a battlefield where you compete for emotional survival. Love becomes a place where you are safe, not a test you must constantly pass. Love becomes something you can recognize because you finally recognize yourself. Your partner choice reveals everything, not to shame you, not to punish you, but to guide you back to the wounds you were never allowed to heal. And once you begin healing those wounds, your entire life takes a different shape. You stop repeating your past. You stop apologizing for your needs. You stop mistaking pain for passion. And for the first time, you choose someone not because they match your trauma, but because they meet your heart. This is the hidden gift inside the hidden cost. We rarely choose partners because they are truly compatible with our future. We choose them because they feel hauntingly familiar to our past. The nervous system gravitates toward what it knows, even when what it knows is the very thing that once hurt us. Attraction, for so many of us, is not a sign of alignment. It is a sign of recognition. A tone of voice, a certain distance, a way of withholding, a type of chaos, a pattern of inconsistency. These qualities can feel strangely magnetic, not because they are healthy, but because they echo the emotional environment in which we first learned what love was supposed to feel like. Compatibility requires conscious awareness. Familiarity requires none. Familiarity is automatic, subconscious, deeply embodied. It calls us back to scenes we never resolved, emotions we never completed, and dynamics we still carry inside us. When someone replicates the emotional landscape of our childhood, whether it was neglect, unpredictability, emotional silence, or a constant need to prove our worth, the body responds with a sense of, this feels right, when in truth, it simply feels known. This is why we may overlook red flags, excuse behavior, or stay in relationships that drain us. The nervous system confuses repetition with safety. It believes that if it can recreate the old wound, maybe this time it can finally earn the love it never received. We are not seeking compatibility. We are unconsciously seeking resolution. We choose the person who mirrors the original pain because a part of us is still trying to finish a story that began long before adulthood. And yet, this pattern has nothing to do with weakness. It reflects how profoundly relational beings we are. We learned about ourselves in the presence of others, and now we try to heal ourselves in the presence of others. But until we become aware of these emotional imprints, our choices remain tethered to an earlier version of us, the child who normalized too much, tolerated too much, or learned to survive instead of feel. When we finally understand this, compassion replaces self-blame. We stop asking why we keep choosing the wrong people, and instead recognize that our choices were shaped by experiences we never consciously agreed to. Healing begins the moment we stop romanticizing familiarity and start questioning it. Only then does compatibility become visible, not the compatibility rooted in old wounds, but the compatibility rooted in mutual safety, authenticity, and emotional presence. True love thrives not when it feels familiar, but when it feels freeing. Only when we heal the emotional patterns of the past can we choose a partner, not because they fit the wound, but because they meet the person we are finally becoming. Unhealed trauma does not shout, it whispers. It sits beneath the surface, shaping who we move toward, what we think we deserve, and how much we are willing to endure. Most people believe they are choosing their partners consciously, but so much of attraction lives in the body, not in logic. The nervous system carries memories the mind has forgotten, and those memories quietly steer us toward people who echo the emotional atmosphere in which we learned about love. If you grew up with inconsistency, unpredictability may feel exciting. If you grew up with emotional distance, unavailability may feel strangely comforting. If you grew up learning that affection must be earned, you may feel drawn to partners who require you to prove your worth. This is not preference. It is imprint. Trauma becomes a silent architect of attraction. It tells you who feels right, not because they are right, but because they match the emotional blueprint you carry in your body. You are not attracted to the person. You are attracted to the familiar wound they awaken, and it does not stop at attraction. Trauma shapes expectations too. It quietly defines what you believe is possible, what you believe you're allowed to ask for, and what you assume is too much. If you were taught that your needs are inconvenient, you'll minimize them. If you learn that conflict leads to punishment or withdrawal, you'll avoid expressing your truth. If you absorb the belief that love means enduring discomfort, you'll tolerate far more than you should. Your tolerance in relationships is one of the clearest mirrors of your past. A person who was raised with safety does not tolerate chaos. A person who grew up with emotional neglect will tolerate being unseen, because the absence feels familiar. A person who was shamed for having needs will tolerate partners who dismiss those needs, because the dismissal feels predictable. This is how unhealed trauma shapes an entire relational life without ever announcing itself. You won't hear it say, choose this person because they remind you of an old wound. You won't hear it say, stay quiet because your feelings don't matter. You won't hear it say, endure this because you endured worse before. But your body responds as if those messages are still true. Healing does not mean erasing the past. It means learning to recognize when the past is choosing for you. It means pausing long enough to ask, is this connection real, or is this my wound reaching for something familiar? Are these expectations healthy, or are they shaped by what I learned to survive? Am I tolerating this because it is acceptable, or because it is familiar? When trauma is unhealed, it becomes the unseen author of your relationships. When you begin to heal, you become the author of your own choices, and slowly the attraction shifts. The expectations rise, the tolerance decreases. You no longer take comfort in what hurts you. You no longer confuse intensity with love, or survival patterns with compatibility. You begin to gravitate toward people who make your nervous system feel safe instead of activated. That is the moment trauma stops guiding your relationships, and your healing starts guiding your life. When something in a relationship triggers you, it may feel sudden, overwhelming, or irrational, but it is rarely an overreaction. It is an old wound resurfacing, a memory stored in the body long before the mind had the words to explain it. Triggers are not about the present moment. They are echoes of experiences you once had to survive. When a partner raises their voice and your chest tightens, you're not responding to this one argument. You're responding to every moment in childhood when anger meant danger. When someone withdraws their affection and you panic, you're not reacting to a short silence. You're reacting to the emotional distance you grew up internalizing as abandonment. When someone dismisses your feelings and you erupt in sadness or frustration, you're not responding to the sentence they just said. You're touching the part of you that learned your emotions were too much or unwelcome. A trigger is the past breaking through the surface. It is the younger self, the one who didn't have power, protection, or language, suddenly stepping into the present, demanding to be seen. We don't choose these reactions, our nervous system does. It recognizes patterns before our mind registers what's happening. It tries to protect us using the same survival strategies we needed years ago: freezing, shutting down, people-pleasing, becoming hypervigilant, or over-explaining ourselves. The body reacts as if the danger is happening again, not realizing it is only being reminded. This is why telling someone to calm down, stop being dramatic, or just get over it completely misses the reality of trauma. Triggers are not exaggerations. They are reminders of pain that was never resolved, confusion that was never soothed, fear that was never comforted. The trigger is not the problem. The unprocessed wound beneath it is. But there is something profoundly hopeful in this. Triggers reveal what still needs healing. They uncover the hidden edges of our story. They show us the exact places where compassion, safety, and deeper understanding are required. Without triggers, many wounds would remain buried and unnamed. Healing begins when you stop judging your reactions and start listening to them. Instead of saying, "I'm overreacting," ask, "What is this reminding me of?" Instead of saying, "I'm being too sensitive," ask, "Where did I learn that sensitivity was unsafe?" Instead of saying, "I shouldn't feel this way," ask, "When was the first time I felt this way?" Triggers are invitations, painful ones, yes, but invitations nonetheless, to meet the parts of you that were once left alone with their fear. When you connect with that younger self, when you soothe what was never soothed, when you update the nervous system with the truth that you are no longer in danger, something powerful happens. The trigger loses its grip. Over time, the same situations that once sent you spiraling become moments of awareness instead of panic. The emotional charge softens. The reaction shortens. The wound finally begins to close. You are not broken for having triggers. You are human for carrying unhealed memories. And the moment you stop treating triggers as flaws and start seeing them as messages, you step into the kind of healing that transforms not just your relationships, but your entire life. Awareness is the turning point, the quiet moment in which a lifelong pattern finally becomes visible. Before awareness, we live inside our conditioning without realizing it. We repeat the same emotional dynamics, attract the same types of relationships, tolerate the same wounds, and call it just the way things are. But the moment we see the pattern clearly, something fundamental shifts. The cycle loses its invisibility. And once something is seen, it cannot be unseen. Unconscious patterns are powerful precisely because they operate beneath thought. You don't decide to choose the unavailable partner. You're drawn to them. You don't decide to suppress your needs. You simply feel unsafe voicing them. You don't decide to stay in painful dynamics. Your nervous system mistakes familiar pain for stability. Awareness interrupts this autopilot. It brings light into the room where your wounds have been making decisions in the dark. It allows you to pause long enough to ask, Is this really mine? Or is this a survival pattern I learned long ago? Is this love? Or is this familiarity masquerading as love? Is this person right for me? Or do they simply match an old wound? That pauses everything. In that moment, the unconscious becomes conscious. The automatic becomes a choice. The past loses its authority over your present. Awareness doesn't immediately erase the emotional pull of old patterns, but it creates a space between trigger and reaction, between longing and decision, between what you've always done and what you're finally capable of choosing. And inside that space, new possibilities begin to grow. With awareness, you start noticing the early signs of unhealthy dynamics you once overlooked. With awareness, you stop explaining away red flags in the name of empathy. With awareness, you begin to recognize the difference between chemistry and emotional activation. With awareness, you understand that discomfort is not a soulmate signal, it's a nervous system memory. Awareness strengthens the part of you that wants to heal and weakens the part of you that is still reenacting the old story. Slowly, you begin making choices you were once incapable of. You set boundaries where you once stayed silent. You walk away from what your childhood self would have endured. You choose people who feel safe instead of people who feel intense. You protect your peace instead of chasing emotional resolution. You honor your needs instead of abandoning them to preserve a relationship. Awareness gives you back the agency that trauma quietly took. It reminds you that you are not condemned to repeat what hurt you. It proves that your patterns are not your personality. They are adaptations, and adaptations can evolve. With enough awareness, the partners you once found irresistible lose their charm. The dynamics you once normalized become intolerable. The love you accept becomes healthier because the love you expect becomes healthier. Awareness is the doorway. Healing is the path. Choice is the freedom that waits on the other side. And every time you choose differently, even in the smallest way, you are rewriting a story that once felt predetermined. You are no longer the child reacting to the past. You are the adult consciously shaping the future. Healing does something subtle yet profoundly life-altering. It rewrites your internal definition of love. Before healing, love is often tangled with survival, a place where you work to be chosen, adjust yourself to avoid conflict, tolerate discomfort to keep the peace, or cling tightly because losing someone feels like losing oxygen. You mistake intensity for closeness, unpredictability for passion, self-abandonment for devotion. You are not loving freely. You are loving with the same strategies you once used to emotionally survive your earliest relationships. When you grow up in environments where love is inconsistent, conditional, or unavailable, the body learns that love is something you must earn. It becomes a performance, not an experience. You read micro-expressions, anticipate mood shifts, silence your needs, and shape yourself into whatever version of you feels safest in the moment. You learn that staying attuned keeps you alive, emotionally, psychologically, sometimes even physically. So when you enter adulthood, survival becomes your blueprint for connection. You look for familiar dynamics because they match what your nervous system has rehearsed for years. Healing interrupts all of this. It teaches your nervous system something it has never truly known. Love does not have to feel like hypervigilance. It does not have to feel like holding your breath. It does not require self-erasure or emotional endurance. Healing reintroduces the idea that love can feel like softness, presence, quiet steadiness, qualities that once felt foreign or even suspicious. As you heal, you start to recognize that people who activate your wounds are not soul connections. They are emotional replicas of the past. The people who once felt compelling, the unavailable, the inconsistent, the unpredictable, lose their magnetic pull. Instead, you begin to feel drawn to someone who offers emotional safety, even if at first that safety feels unfamiliar or boring. In truth, it's not boring, it's peaceful. But when your nervous system has lived in chaos, peace requires adjustment. Healing gives you the capacity for that adjustment. You also begin to understand that love does not demand suffering. You no longer equate sacrifice with loyalty or self-neglect with commitment. You no longer seek partners who need to be saved or partners who expect you to save them. Instead of choosing people who trigger your wounds, you choose people who respect your boundaries. Instead of tolerating emotional hunger, you expect reciprocity. Instead of clinging for fear of loss, you stay because the connection supports your well-being. And perhaps the most beautiful shift is this: you stop abandoning yourself to keep love, and love no longer requires abandoning yourself. That single shift changes every relationship you will ever have. Healing transforms love into something that nourishes rather than drains, something that grounds rather than destabilizes, something that invites growth rather than recreates pain. Love becomes a space where you can breathe, speak, rest, and be fully seen. Love becomes a place where your nervous system softens instead of braces. Love becomes a shared safety, not a shared struggle. When survival is no longer your default, love no longer feels like a battlefield. It becomes a home, not the kind you lose yourself in, but the kind you return to as the truest version of who you are. That is the gift of healing. It doesn't just transform you. It transforms what you call love, what you accept as love, and what you will never again mistake for love. When healing begins to take root, something remarkable shifts in the way you choose partners. The criteria that once guided your heart, intensity, chemistry, familiarity, emotional highs and lows, begin to lose their power. You stop gravitating toward people who awaken your wounds, and instead, you start noticing the people who nurture your growth. This shift doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds quietly as your nervous system learns that it no longer has to repeat the past to feel at home. Before healing, your choices are often shaped by unresolved pain. You may feel drawn to what mirrors your early relationships, the emotionally distant partner who triggers your abandonment fears, the unpredictable partner who activates your anxiety, the self-centered partner who makes you work for scraps of affection. These patterns feel magnetic not because they are healthy, but because they are familiar. And familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar peace. But healing teaches you to read attraction differently. Instead of asking, does this feel intense? You begin asking, does this feel safe? Instead of wondering, how can I keep them? You start asking, do I feel like myself with them? Instead of seeking someone who fills the emptiness, you seek someone who honors your fullness. Supporting growth means choosing partners who hold space for your voice, not silence it. Partners who listen instead of react. Partners who regulate alongside you instead of escalating conflict. Partners who invite honesty, not performance. Partners who don't require you to shrink, mold, impress, or overfunction to feel valuable. A growth-supporting partner doesn't fear your evolution. They encourage it. They don't punish your boundaries. They respect them. They don't treat your healing as a threat. They see it as part of your becoming. Most importantly, they don't awaken your old wounds for the relationship to survive. They help you feel safe enough to finally let those wounds heal. And the choices you begin making reflect this inner shift. You no longer ignore red flags in the name of chemistry. You no longer cling to relationships that cost you your peace. You no longer lose yourself trying to earn love that should never require your abandonment. You begin choosing from a place of worthiness, not desperation, from clarity, not fear, from healing, not habit. The painful truth is that when you heal, some people can no longer walk with you, not because they're bad, but because they represent a chapter you're no longer living in. You outgrow partners who rely on your brokenness to maintain the connection. You outgrow the dynamics that require chaos to feel alive. You outgrow environments where you are tolerated instead of valued. And in that letting go, you create room for someone aligned with your growth. Someone capable of meeting you with emotional maturity, consistency, presence, and genuine care. Someone with whom love feels collaborative rather than performative. Someone who doesn't recreate the pain you've spent years trying to understand, but instead participates in the healing that brings you back to yourself. That is the profound shift. You stop choosing partners who keep you trapped in the past and begin choosing partners who help you build a future. In the end, every pattern you've repeated, every heartbreak you've carried, and every lesson you've learned has been guiding you toward one truth. You deserve a love that does not wound you to feel real. You deserve a life where safety is not a memory you've never had, but a reality you finally claim. And as you heal, you will outgrow the people and the pain that once felt like destiny. You will begin choosing with clarity, not fear, with self-respect, not survival. May you trust the quiet wisdom within you. May you honor the wounds that shaped you without letting them choose for you. And may the love you accept from this Point forward, reflect the healing you have fought so hard to earn. You are not your past. You are the person who survived it, and the one who is finally free to choose something better.